Hi there, Torey Lightcap here from St. Thomas in Sioux City with a few thoughts about Anthony Robinson's book, Changing the Conversation. Changing the Conversation was a book that was recommended by Bishop Scarf to our congregation last summer, back when we were in the middle of some pretty heavy financial decisions that we were making as a parish. And it was so good that he recommended it to us. It was difficult to read because in many ways I saw myself reflected on so many pages. I found myself indicted in some ways and affirmed in others. It was a real coming down off my pedestal and onto my knees kind of moment as I read through it. And I will tell you that it took me quite a long time to read it the first time. I found so much of myself in it and so much of the parishes that I've served in it that it became more and more difficult to want to move forward with him. And so I recognize firsthand that what he says in some places can be really hard to hear. But I want you to know that the book is ultimately a real expression of life and the value of life that congregations bring. In order to get us to that, we do have to do some looking at ourselves. And that's really what he's calling for in these first several chapters before he can get to any more sort of programmatic approaches. He says that we have become too comfortable with the sound of our own voices. That doesn't mean that our communities are not filled with wonderful people who seek to serve God in many ways. It just means that when we have done things the way that we have done them, it can be sometimes very difficult to hear what's new, to hear the news in things. And our places of worship, which have been the same for years and years and years, I'm standing in front of one right now just to give you a sense of what we're like. Our sense of ourselves, if it doesn't change, it becomes calcified. And spiritual pride is the sin that says, this is okay. We can keep it this way for as long as we possibly can. Or in some cases, hey, just until my funeral's over with, that's not good enough. That's not going to cut it anymore. Robinson says that the only antidote to this situation is a primary, direct encounter with God. And that means, in part, learning to let God be God. It's about responding and feeding to a basic hunger that we all have in our souls and in our hearts. And there's no program or strategy that you can map out that's necessarily going to be able to do this. It's more just a recognition through some moment of some kind. Mine was probably lately, reading in this book, that God is living and loving, and that a new and different kind of encounter with Jesus Christ is entirely possible. That can be good news for those of us who have grown weary in our grooves that we've followed along for all these years. And in learning to experience God, not by rote necessarily, but in some other new and interesting way, this is hard work. And Robinson knows that, and anybody who's walked the path for a while is aware of that too. When you know that you stand to lose something that you think is precious, it's easier not to walk that path of real discipleship. But when you lose something in the spiritual path, you gain something. You give up something and you get something. And if I've learned anything in my life as a Christian, it's that often what is received after or during the loss is something that is far more precious, far less explicable. To have a direct and primary encounter with God is to lose something, but to gain something. And within that, what we learn as congregations is that there is reward when we go about things with the sense that it's a little dangerous, we're going to risk something, but we're also following this grand adventure that God has called us to. We ourselves, he also points out, we, people in these pews and the ministers doing the work on Sunday of the primary, the altar work and so on, everybody, clergy, people, this beautiful mixture that we're starting to see, this incredible overlap, all of us need to be evangelized at some level and in some way. That must be strange to say that Christians need to be evangelized. But he talks about evangelism in a way that lights a spark in us. That where we undergo Christly transformation. I think of transformation as being formed by and shaped like Jesus himself. That's the Christian path to it. He also talks about the need that all people of faith have to receive the depth and learning and formation in Scripture and in the democratizing, the fair sharing of theology for everyone. It really goes back to something that Bishop Elena said when she came here from Swaziland last fall. She remarked that she felt that the clergy were at their best when they were giving away what it was that they had to give away. Otherwise, she said, she didn't quite understand what a priest was for. But these tools, the Scripture and the theology that we can give to the folks in the congregations we serve, these are what Robinson calls the birthright of all believers. And so we do have something to give in that regard, clergy, and to everyone else that wants to walk that path, ask for it. Be clear. And if you don't get what it is that you're looking for in your formation, either with Bible or other kinds of theological matters, ask for it again and keep knocking on the door. There are also all kinds of communities of faith on the internet and at our diocesan level where people are concerned about formation. So there are ways to say, to reach out to those groups to resource your congregations. If you want a new heart this Lent and you're looking for some fast way to get it, well, you know, Lent is 40 days. Easter is 50 days. Maybe in the span of that 90 days, the taking on of a new habit or refraining from an old one might be something that you can do to begin to plow that ground within the heart. But of course, it's God who is the mover. I would say that beyond that, there are some things that can be done in a kind of an immediate way. One is to change something about the spaces in your life, especially the ones in the short term that you have some immediate control over. Pick up a chair, move it across the room. Create a prayer space for yourself that is dedicated just for that. Or visit with people on the Altar Guild about where the linens are kept. Just some small surprise somewhere. Who knows what you can do? The second thing that you could do that would be, I think, in keeping with the spirit of this chapter is to try to move toward the kind of Bible study in your congregation that is more, again, democratized, that is a shared function with shared leadership, where all people have the opportunity to chime in about how they feel God is speaking to them through the scriptures. And then a third sort of fast thing that I will name for you that will obviously be a long and protracted process, possibly if you take it seriously, is to take an honest look at your church's or your personal finances. Look for those places that are unsustainable or that may not reflect your own theology about generosity toward God or other services that are important and precious to you. So those are just some notions from chapter 3. I bid you peace and a blessed Lent.